Hey everybody, and saddle up with us. It is another episode of the Mainly Broncos podcast. And then in this episode, it is just Matty Moles and I and breaking down the big Denver Broncos victory over the New England Patriots in Foxborough. The Denver Broncos came out as victors against the New England Patriots, and there was so much build-up, Matty, with everything that certainly unfolded with this game. From, are we going to be even having this game? Are we going to see it postponed? Are we going to see it go to Tuesday? Are we going to see it go to Monday? There was so much build-up. Are they even going to play the game at all? I mean, there was so much build-up happening with this game. They finally got it done. We don't necessarily know, of course, with all the whole COVID protocol, what the whole fallout could be, potentially. Are people clear and so on and so forth on each side. But, Matty, the most important thing of all is the Broncos came out as victors, and also because so much had unfolded since the last podcast that we had done with Alex Valdez. And by the way, thank you to Alex for hopping on with us on that podcast and recapping the Jets game, previewing the Patriots game. Thank you so much to Alex for hopping on with us. And for Matty and myself, you guys can follow us on Twitter too, over on Twitter at Cameron Parker PO and Matty at Matty Moles Pod. But Matty, it really was it was a roller coaster week, but we finally got it over with. Well, or we should say a roller coaster few weeks, right, Matty?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Look, we were ready to go last week. We were ready to go stomp these dudes last week. And they got COVID. Cam testing positive for COVID. A couple of their players or staff personnel popping positive. We were really, kind of deflated because our guys were in practice all week, gearing up for a game, and then they were told, no, you're actually on bye. Like, it wasn't a traditional bye week. The Broncos aren't getting a traditional bye week where they get to stay at home and hang out with their family and get a handful of days off. It was like we didn't know that this game was off until way, way late in the week. So it wasn't really traditional in that sense. But the Broncos were able to basically leverage all that additional practice time, and they came out looking very sharp on the defensive side of the ball, and really on the offensive side too. We'll talk about some of that later, but even though it wasn't a bye week like what you would normally have if you're through the grind of a season, especially with as many injuries as the Broncos have, and good news may be on the way, which we'll talk about also later, still took advantage of it, and props have to go out to the coaching staff for having us ready to go. It's very tough to get up and get ready to play a game, and then on Friday be told that the game's not going, and then we think we're going to be doing it on Monday at 4 o'clock, and then told, no, that's not the case either. This is actually just a bye week for you. Man, it's like, how apprehensive do you think guys were, even on Saturday? The Saturday before the game actually took place, that the game would actually, in fact, take place. That a lot of that goes to the players being mentally strong, as well as the coaching staff having the players ready to go. So props to Fangio and company for that.
Let me be honest with you, Matty, because it was such a roller coaster week. Let me ask you this question, because it went through my mind, and I'm sure it went through your mind, and of course probably everybody of Broncos country. But the news of Saturday, when we got the news of Saturday that Sony Michel, Shaq Mason, and someone else were put on the reserve COVID list on Saturday as new additions. Now, granted, Sony Michel was already on IR, but then they moved him to the COVID reserve list. But what went through your mind when that happened, and then when we wake up to the news also on Saturday that the Broncos running backs coach Curtis Modkins tested positive for COVID? What was going through your mind? Obviously, and we touched a little bit about the roller coaster week that happened, 2 weeks that happened. What was going through your mind as we're kind of recapping it before we go to the game, but recapping everything that unfolded even to that day on Sunday.
Yeah, I was already thinking that the NFL season was going to have to get pushed out to 18 weeks, maybe 19 plus weeks, just to allow for makeup games potentially to happen. The Broncos don't have any more flexibility now. I want to say they had 2 games shifted, right? So we didn't get to play the Dolphins this week. We had to play the Patriots this week. Our bye week's gone, and so we play. I want to say we play the Chargers a week early in what would have been a week, and then we play the Dolphins the week that we were supposed to play the Chargers. Is that correct? Am I misremembering that?
We were supposed to play the Dolphins this week, yes, or the weekend yesterday on Sunday. We were technically supposed to be playing the Miami Dolphins, but of course that changed. And then we were honestly supposed to be playing the Chiefs a little bit later, from what I believe, right? Or we were supposed to be playing the Chiefs at some point a little bit later, and then they kind of did the whole switch up.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the Chief game was there, and then I think our actual bye week moved, and so there were a handful of games that were affected here. For us, I thought, well, we have no more flexibility left in our schedule. This game is going to have to get made up, and it's going to have to get made up, week 18 probably. They're probably going to have to instate that. And then we get the news from Shefty that the game's actually, no kidding, going to play.
Yeah.
And so I was very elated, for one, just because I was like, all right, well, let's get this over with. They got Cam back. They got Gilmore back. It looks like all the stars are aligning for the Patriots to get a win at home, going up against a rusty Drew Lock and company. No Noah Fant, no KJ Hamler, some other guys like Atachu being out, some very key pieces of our team missing. But we did have an unlikely hero, or very likely compared to your mindset, but some guys stepped up and it was great. But I'm very glad that they got the game to play regardless of the result. But going back to your question, I thought that we were going to have to push this thing out.
I think that was the expectation. From what I was talking with Ryan Edwards on Saturday, it seemed like that was the expectation. If they were not going to be playing on Sunday, was that it was going to end up being pushed back to either Monday or Tuesday. That was the expectation. Now, as far as the game itself, and I think that there's the best way to describe this game or really any sort of game of 2020 is there's just a lot of layers to pull down from it. And I think that for the Broncos' sake and for anything that kind of unfolded with this particular game, there's just a lot of layers to it. And I think that with everything that unfolded, everything that we just touched base there, I think that it created this extra incentive, or to really put it bluntly, this pissed off mentality by the Broncos, and more in particular by the defensive side of the ball, that it made them want to go out and play at that higher clip that we had seen post Sam Darnold run. Remember we talked about that after Sam Darnold's run was really when that defense started to click. I mean, you started to see Vic Fangio start using the blitz more, being more aggressive, really getting after the quarterback. We started to see a lot more of that with not just the linebackers this time, but safeties, linebackers, unlikely heroes of Anthony Chickillo, Malik Reed, getting to Cam Newton. I just think that there was just a more cohesive effort on all fronts of the football, and I think that there were times, and if we truly want to be objective about this, and it was said about a billion times by Trent Green on the broadcast, but who mentioned that the Patriots had not practiced for such and such a day, or they only practiced legitimately for 2 days and had walkthroughs each and every single day. I think that, yes, the Patriots didn't have a lot of practices, but at the same time, you still have to go out and play. You still have to go out and perform. And it was definitely evident that the practices caused the Patriots at least to really knock them out of their rhythm. I mean, let's be honest. It seemed like it really knocked them out of their rhythm, and at least from the first, second, third, and then by the end of the fourth quarter was right around the time when the Patriots hit their stride. But I mean, overall, I think that as we're talking about layers, Maddie, it's really, really important that I think just based on everything that unfolded with that game, that the Broncos really, really, really wanted to play this football game, and they played pissed off because of that. Like, they really wanted to really show out and prove that they can go win a football game.
Yeah, I mean, so you talked about not just the mentality, but also the strategy or basically putting pride out the window to a degree for Fangio and company. I'm glad we started blitzing. Look, we should have been done blitzing a long time ago to help make the loss of Von Miller from the jump. But each of the last 2 weeks, we've been blitzing at a super high level, and we've gotten 2 wins. We've gotten turnovers, we've gotten pressure on the quarterback. We've been able to really affect the game, and we started attacking on defense instead of getting our defense attacked. And I really do appreciate that. That mindset really did carry over after that Sam Darnold run, after which I made a bet with my dad that Cam Newton was going to run for more yards than Sam Darnold against us, and I think I lost that bet. But it came close, but I think I lost it. The Broncos defense really locked in, and they played with a lot of pride, and really they carried our team the entirety of the game. Really, I mean, our offense did good things, but when you're consistently only dropping 3 points in the bucket instead of 7, that bucket's not as heavy as it should be by the end of the game. And I mean, one possession really by New England after a mistake by us, and it got them right back thinking they could win a game that they've been dominated for 3.5 quarters. And then 2 back-to-back mistakes total on offense really made things interesting. So I do have to say, though, like, the Broncos team as a whole seems as though they took on a different mentality after that Sam Darnold touchdown run. And even despite the break, it did, in fact, carry over to the start of this game all the way through the first 3 quarters.
Yeah, and as far as, of course, just the overall completeness of the team, the Broncos got their quarterback back. And in the grand scheme of things, you touched on it, that the Broncos offense collectively played better. I mean, we touched briefly on that at the beginning. That they played better against the New England Patriots. However, and it really goes from anybody that is a professional NFL team. You will not win a lot of games when you're putting up 3 points on anybody. I mean, the Broncos are going to be playing the Kansas City Chiefs this upcoming Sunday. You can't win games going up against the Kansas City Chiefs by getting field goals. You just can't. Now, granted, I think that as we're talking layers, there you also have to take what is given to you, and I think that I will be honest. There probably was not a moment in the game, and I think that as the points were starting to mount for Denver at that particular point where it was 18-3, there really wasn't a point in the game where I was overly concerned until like that fourth quarter. Like, there really was not a point once we had reached that 12-3, 18-3, where I was not really overly concerned. But once those interceptions happened and everything, that's when those thoughts start to creep in a little bit, of course. But overall, collectively, as we were talking about, they played more of a complete game. Like, they played more of a complete game, it seemed. And I truly believe with the execution still being just a hair off for this team, that they're just so close to just breaking that. And I think that maybe overall the red zone offense, I think collectively we're looking at it just from the sheer execution standpoint, Maddie, maybe. Because if you go back and look at that game and go back and look at the stuff with the New England Patriots, all in all, the true execution of that game, if the Broncos convert just at least, and if we're being honest, at least 2 of the touchdowns, potential touchdowns of what could have been to Albert, and actually, yeah, I mean, those are 2 touchdowns right there, and
I mean, yeah, and that makes first of all the Drew Lock haters would have nothing to say after that, because his stat line would look a lot better than it does with 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, and what was it, 189 yards passing for Drew Lock. The 10 of 24 would look better because those drops would not be incompletions. They would be completions for yards and a couple of touchdowns. And O actually had 2 opportunities to score for us, and it didn't work out. And Hamilton, wide open on the sideline, tripping over his feet, lets the ball just fall to the ground. I mean, he had an easy touchdown. I mean, most NFL receivers, I'd say most, I mean, probably all, if you're in the NFL and if you call yourself an NFL wide receiver, that should be a play that you make 10 times out of 10. And the ball was placed perfect. Drew Lock was throwing some dimes out there, and it wasn't paid off. So I agree that, we could have, if guys converted a little bit better, that we are able to pay some of those possessions off, or some of those red zone possessions off, with 7 instead of 3. My point of concern is we were able to establish the run at basically anywhere on the field until we got basically inside the 15-yard line. Mm-hmm. And then once we did that, the Patriots were pinning their ears back and coming and getting us, and we weren't able to move them off the line. We either have to make those safeties pay for making 2-3 steps forward towards the line of scrimmage, or we've got to be able to just out-muscle people and win anyway, even against stacked boxes, knowing we're going to run. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I know that the Chiefs have a bend but don't break defense at times, and they really get locked down when teams get into the red zone, and they force you to basically make a couple of guys miss, and they make it tough to get in the end zone there. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can make them pay for letting us get in the red zone, or if it's going to be more of the same next week against Kansas City. I would be willing to say that we're probably going to be placing a super large percentage of our practice reps working inside the 20. And we're probably going to spend a lot of our time when we don't do that in our 2-minute offense having to have tempo just to keep the Chiefs off pace, because I don't know that the same game plan that we used against New England is gonna be the answer against the Chiefs. We're not going to be able to just run the ball and do clock management and kick field goals and get out of this game with a win.
I mean, they could easily do that too. I mean, they could easily do that, but at the same token, to what you talked about, once they get to the red zone, they absolutely have to get it in the end zone. So I think one of the other areas and point of emphasis to this week as they prepare for the Kansas City Chiefs is that they have to finish those short yardage plays. I mean, they can't beat around the bush. They can't get too cute. And I think that that's ultimately where there's, as we're saying, there's a lot of layers to this particular point, which we'll talk about later, because we do want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the quarterback of Drew Lock. But the point, though, is they can't beat around the bush. If you have a 3rd and 2 or if you have a 3rd and 2 and a particular point where you have your stud running back who came and returned from a turf toe injury and put 100 rushing yards on the board with 23 some carries, you should at the very least run the football with him, even if it was 3rd and 2. So I think one of the point of emphasis this week absolutely has to be the short yardage, because if they do want to churn that clock and keep that clock moving in favor of them and keep Patrick Mahomes off the field next week, they have to convert those short yardage plays. And is that going to be a re-emergence of both a Melvin Gordon and a Phillip Lindsay this upcoming week against the Chiefs? And those
maybe
those are news that we'll end up talking about a little bit later. But as far as just the game itself with New England, that was one of the key emphasis points of a huge struggle. And Vic Fangio talked about it on Monday, that they want to start working, it seems, on those short yardage situations. And I will say this, in the grand scheme of things, like in the grand scheme of that entire game, they did really well on short yardage. But it was just once they got into that fourth quarter, the third down conversions didn't add up. I mean, you started to get the point where started maybe around have the 40% clip, which is good in the grand scheme of things in the NFL. But as far as winning football games, you want to be rather consistent with that third down conversion. But overall, the Broncos, at the same token, have to be better with those short yardage plays, and whether that's a mixture of Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, Royce Freeman, they have to maintain that consistency of toting the rock with that as far as running the football.
Yeah, I completely agree. The offensive line looked really good, though, in basically the normal flow of our offense, being able to move New England off the ball, being able to open up some running lanes or at least slow down the perimeter defenders. But as good as the line looked at times, man, Phillip Lindsay made them look even better. He was able to put his foot in the ground and get upfield. He was able to do some hop steps and some jukes to open up the lanes the way they needed to be. And then he showed extreme patience and explosive ability, being able to bounce some of those runs outside and get around the guy who would be responsible for outside contain, be it a safety that was playing up or an outside backer, if you will. But Phillip Lindsay does, in fact, look back. I can't really think of any mistakes he made that he really made on Sunday. One thing that was kind of interesting to me, though, is the thing that we've been talking about. Phillip Lindsay, when he's on the field, it seems like he's on the field to run the football. When he's off the field, it seems like he's on the field to or off the field. That's when we're throwing the football. We had a couple of play action fakes in there, which was fine. But looking at this, Phillip Lindsay, 0 targets, not involved in the passing game at all, unless it's on a play fake and he's supposed to eat up a defender because the defender thinks he has the football. So something to keep in mind, especially if Gordon ends up getting a suspension later for his DUI, if the NFL takes action on that in November. I want to say like November 13th or 18th, somewhere in there is his court date. So that'll be very interesting to see. But as far as play calling goes, I would like to see Phillip Lindsay be involved a little bit more in the passing game, if nothing else, just to keep defenses honest. So Phillip Lindsay did great, but the play calling was very predictable. And I think that had something to do maybe a little bit with our inability to punch the ball in the red zone, as well as a couple of those short yardage opportunities.
Yeah, and you touched a little bit about Phillip Lindsay. This I felt still, and it goes from game to game to game, with that particular duo of Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay, because they want to make sure that they prove that they are the guy, that this is that both of them, whether it's Melvin Gordon or Phillip Lindsay, they want to prove that they are the guy for the future of this team that can be that future bell cow. You clearly saw a boatload of everything. I mean, you saw in last week's game against the New York Jets, Melvin Gordon had over 20 plus carries, and had roughly the exact same yardage. Then you fast forward to the New England Patriots game, and Philip Lindsay in his first game back after having the turf toe injury, 20-plus carries and over 100 yards, which darn near averaging about 5 yards a carry. And, I mean, you look at just that from just the sheer standpoint of maybe where the Broncos are going to be going with both of these guys. It could be a running back by committee, but as far as talking about Philip Lindsay, he really, to me, is a very special running back. Just with how you alluded to it, how he has the ability to cut on a dime, stop on a dime, change direction, and really just create opportunities for himself. And I think that one of the best things about Philip Lindsay is that in today's NFL, those types of running backs really do matter. And now, granted, the overall scope is running backs don't matter because it's the most replaceable position on a football field in retrospect. But the type of running backs that have that type of success in the National Football League are those backs that can be shifty or change direction and really be that patient to let those blockers set up. And I think the vision aspect is maybe just a little bit off on Lindsay at times, but I think that that's just mainly him being able to create a play for himself, and that I think that just comes with the territory. But he is a special running back, and I think at some point they will have to utilize him in the passing game, Maddie. And we say it so often, at least with Lindsay. This is nothing new to him. He can be involved in the passing game, and I think that it's so funny whenever we see the naysayers say that, well, Philip Lindsay can't be that passing threat out of the backfield. And it's like, living in Colorado and yes, me being a Huskers fan, but learning so much about Philip Lindsay and everything that was involved with him, when you see how he developed at CU and with the Colorado Buffaloes, he was a all-purpose running back. I mean, he was a guy that was doing kickoffs, punt returns. He was utilized out of the backfield as a weapon, as a as a receiver. I mean, he was a do-it-all running back out of the backfield for CU. So it makes it so funny to me whenever people coin with Philip Lindsay that he can't be that receiving back out of the backfield. It's just so funny to me whenever people that are the naysayers say stuff like that, because it's like, sure, the Broncos did not target him, like you said, Maddie. They didn't target him for those 0 targets or whatever. But I mean, really, it's not like he's not capable. I mean, they're gonna interpret that surely that he got 0 targets, so therefore he's not capable. Maybe in the grand scheme of things with this entire game, Maddie, and maybe it's with what we've seen overall with Philip Lindsay and his time as a Bronco, that they just are trying to figure out how to utilize him in the passing game, which is, I guess, a fault of the coaching staff, maybe. But maybe it's just to where they're trying to figure out how they can utilize him in the passing game. But he clearly has proven, whether it's in college or at some sample size, that he is capable of being that back.
I mean, sure, he's probably got that capacity, but the coaching staff obviously doesn't see him that way. They really don't see Royce Freeman being that guy either. It's pretty weird that the coaching staff had so much faith in Devontae Booker to be that guy last season. It was just, you'd see Philip, play action fake on second down, right? And it's incomplete, and then you see Philip Lindsay going off the field, and they're bringing on Freeman. I mean, that was a continuing theme throughout the entirety of the game. Freeman only had 1 target, also, by the way. So the only running back that I think the coaching staff is going to scheme for in the passing game is Melvin Gordon. We have seen him be very involved catching the football already this season. So I think that's probably just what the scheme's going to be and what our mentality is going to be going forward, which makes it extremely, extremely predictable for the defense and doesn't put any pressure on the linebackers or safeties and having to hold the flat accountable or worry about an arrow route or worry about anything like that for the running backs. They're either getting the ball in a handoff or they're staying in the block. And that's really the only two options. That's one less decision that a defense is going to have to make. As long as it's Philip Lindsay, or as long as it's number 30 or number 28 back there, or that's going to be where it's at. But I think we do. I like the aggressiveness that we had throwing the ball downfield.
Mm-hmm.
I really do like that aggressiveness. Maybe not on 3rd and 2, but I do like the aggressiveness. But I just want us to be a little less predictable with our personnel out there and be able to utilize them more. There's no reason why we can't put Philip Lindsay out in the slot somewhere, or even line him up wide and do a tunnel screen or some type of a quick screen to him with a couple of bodies, a Tim Patrick and an Albert O, for instance. That would be kind of interesting. Maybe do a motion like they think, he's going to come back into the backfield and then goes back the other way and then catches it, and those two guys are in front of him, and all he's got to do is make one guy miss and he could be gone. They apparently don't see him that way, though. They're not trying that at all. They're really not trying that with anybody, which is also interesting. We're not really trying to hit the screen. We're not trying to do any quick action to put pressure on those corners and such to make plays and make open field tackles. So very interesting. A lot of our stuff is down the field, along the sidelines. Maybe it was strictly because the Patriots were playing a lot of cover 2. Gilmore was playing a lot of like flat to the man to a drift back before he could pass the guy off to the safety. I really can't wait to see the coach's film to validate that. So maybe a lot of this particular game was what is New England taking away and what are they really forcing us to do. But overall, it was very frustrating for me, the predictability. When Philip Lindsay was in, I'm like, okay, it's a run or it's a play-action pass. And Lindsay's not going to be involved if it's a pass at all.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to some of the players of the game. Game balls. I think it's pretty evident on who is the clear-cut favorite. We're not allowed to say him, right? Brandon McManus, you got it. You are the player of the game.
You
are the clear-cut player of the game. And to be honest, come Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm sure we'll get the announcement that Brandon McManus will be Special Teams Player of the Week. If he's not, I will be very, very disappointed that Brandon McManus did not win the Special Teams Player of the Week. And real quick on Brandon McManus, he really is performing to his contract. I remember the last time the Broncos gave him the contract extension. He hit a little bit of a rough patch, and during social media and everything, a lot of people were really ripping McManus to shreds. That he really wasn't playing up to that contract. And then out of the clear blue, just this year, the Broncos rewarded him with that contract extension, and right now he's playing lights out. He's really become maybe the MVP of the team right now this year, and maybe even in years prior. He's really becoming that guy. But as far as our players of the game, Maddie, we touched a little bit on it before, where we talked as far as the elephant in the room. I'm going to give the player of the game at least one of my game balls to Drew. I'm going to give one of my game balls to Drew Lock. He came back and he just right off the bat, he beat New England. He and the Broncos beat New England. He is the youngest quarterback to win a game at Gillette Stadium. He is the youngest quarterback ever to win a game at Gillette Stadium. And he clearly showed that he has that skill set to be in the National Football League and be a really good quarterback. And he really, in my estimation, in just his quick time back, he clearly proved that he has a deep ball. He can shut up the doubters a little bit on that game, that he has a pretty darn good deep ball. And he showed a lot of resiliency. I think that was the most important part. And one in particular down was the 3rd and 21 that they converted to Tim Patrick, who probably, maybe spoiler alert, is another game ball again for 2 weeks in a row. But Drew Lock showed a lot of resiliency that game, and in particular the first 2 downs to where I believe it was a short run that got stuffed, and then it was a sack on Drew Lock to where they ripped their where they ripped Lock's head off, and if I'm being blunt, probably could have been called for a face mask on that play where they sacked Lock. But it was a 3rd and 21. The Patriots probably caught it at a point where they just thought they were going to run. Drew took advantage of the fact that Tim Patrick was running down the sidelines, and Patrick made a really nice play to really size up his man, size up actually the safety coming across too. Took the hit and got both feet in, and it was a resilient play from Drew Lock that you want to see. That if he can just stand in there and make those big time throws, that particular throw alone is why Drew Lock has so much buzz in Colorado as the Denver Broncos future right there. Just that play alone, just the fact that he's got the resiliency, he's got the arm, and for anybody that really wants to harp on the fact about the deep pass and everything, he can clearly throw the deep ball. I mean, there's just absolutely no debate about it.
So plenty of buzz, pun intended, right?
Mm-hmm, pun intended.
So I agree. Going back to that second down play that got us in that 3rd and 21 in the first place, you might look at that and say, wow, Bowles really blew it there. But Drew Lock had to stay back and couldn't step up in the pocket because the Patriots freaking blitzed everybody up both A-gaps. And there was a complete whiff by Royce Freeman. I mean, I still don't know who the heck he was trying to block on that play. And so when the quarterback takes his drop but doesn't reset and then take a step or 2 back into the pocket, you're putting your outside linemen, your tackles or tight ends, whoever's responsible for taking care of the edge, you're putting them really on an island. So 2020 is weird, bro. I'm taking up for Garrett Bowles on a play. When normally last year I was just looking for anything and everything to go at him on. But Bowles played exceptionally well too. I gotta give it to Dotson on the other side. I mean, we really were able to hold their pass rush at bay for the most part. Locke was able to be on time. Now, granted, a lot of that was because we got ahead of the sticks and we were able to just get some momentum and get some nice rhythm going on offense. But the offensive line, the exterior part of our offensive line had a really good game. Our interior line still left some to be desired. Guys were still having some mistakes, not able to play stunts, not able to handle bull rushes and spin moves on the inside of the offensive line. But I'm giving the game ball to I agree with Locke. I'm going to give the game ball to both of our tackles, Dotson, and I'm giving it to Bowles, just in their ability to help keep Drew Lock upright for the most part in that game. Drew didn't have to worry about getting stripped. He certainly didn't have the exterior pressure on him that Cam Newton had on him this game. So my offensive game ball goes to the offensive tackles. Honorable mention will be Tim Patrick because the guy played well, and then of course Lindsey played well too. But fast forwarding to that 3rd down and 21 play. Have you seen the Twitter post? I'm trying to remember who it was right now that posted it, but there's a side-by-side of the same Drew Lock pass to Tim Patrick up the sideline in cover 2, this time against the Patriots. Last year against the Houston Texans, it looked basically like the same play. Yeah. He caught it and got lit up by the safety coming in and held on to the ball well. He was a little shaken up after this week's play. He still held on to the ball. But, man, Tim Patrick, he's nails, man, especially on that 3rd down and long. That was really a huge play, too, because New England could have had a lot of momentum off that sack. And then 3rd and 21, they get the ball back. Maybe the offense gets going. And I think we ended up going down and getting another field goal after that, and that extended it to a 15-point lead for us, 18-3, if I'm not mistaken, at that juncture in the game. So very, very key point there. And Tim Patrick, man, you were nailed. So honorable mention, you don't quite get the game ball. Go wrestle it away from Garrett if you want to, but there you go. And then what do you have for the defensive side?
Oh, defense, I think it's evident. Aside, and I will say this, probably even aside from Brandon McManus as being the clear-cut favorite, if we didn't want to give it to Brandon McManus as the clear-cut favorite, it is the guy that should have 2 interceptions on the season, and a guy that, here's a hot take. This is Cameron's hot take of the season right now. I think, and I'm not going to put him in the conversation, but I think there is a legit argument that Michael Ojemudia is a top 10 corner in just that discussion right now in the National Football League. As far as in the discussion. Like I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying he is in that discussion. That you can make an argument that he is in that discussion as far as being a top 10 corner. And if you go back and look at it, he clearly he's proving that he belongs in the NFL. Now the true test will of course come this upcoming week when they play the Kansas City Chiefs and and who will he be going up against? Will it be Tyreek Hill? Will Sammy Watkins play? Is it going to be McCole Hardman? You know, who will his task be as far as that assignment? But Ojemudia, he forced 2 turnovers. I mean, he forced 2 turnovers. We all thought it was going to end up being, the interception, but it ended up being that he forced 2 turnovers. And, Justin Simmons, obviously, we could say was close to a turnover. Bryce Callahan got a turnover. I mean, there were 2 interceptions as well in that game. One to Bryce Callahan, and the other one, I forget where the other one.
Deshaun Williams.
Was Deshaun Williams? Was Deshaun Williams?
You know what? Put him in our goal line package. Let's go. Let's use him at tight end. Maybe he's the answer. Let's go get big number 90 out there and play him at tight end. Let's go.
And you know what? As far as an honorable mention on the defensive line, I say we roll Sylvester Williams and Deshaun Williams in there as our honorable mentions on both of them because they were thrust into a very difficult situation of replacing guys like Draymond Jones, DeMarcus Walker, Jarrell Casey, and they really did a terrific job. Shelby Harris batted the ball, and you could not have asked for a more athletic play from a defensive lineman than what you saw from Deshaun Williams on that interception. And it was a huge moment of that game early on that really flipped momentum once again to the Broncos. And so I think that if we're talking honorable mentions, Maddie, and with the running game in general, Deshaun Williams and Sylvester Williams, and an old name from the past, really came out and played.
Yeah, man, there are so many guys that you could legitimately give this to on the defensive side of the ball. Malik Reed was incredible. Three quarterback hits, especially imposing his will in that second half, with both of his sacks coming in that half. That was just, man, the guy, number 59, coming on the edge was just a monster. But he was a monster because number 96 up the middle was doing so much work and required so much attention. I mean, extend him. And then, speaking of pay that man, Justin Simmons' wife just posted a picture of on Twitter. Not just, I guess it was like 10 hours ago as of right now, of Justin Simmons on the sideline having his phone call up, I guess, to a coordinator or something up in the booth, and side by side with with Jerry Maguire. Show me the money. And she's like, if you know, you know. It's just that was so awesome. And honestly, I mean, Justin Simmons was all over the field. Mm-hmm. There was one play in particular I can think of where he looked like Cam Newton was going to get out and turn the corner and be able to maybe get a big run, and he saw 31 bearing down on him like a heat-seeking missile and said, "Nah, I don't want to take this hit," and kind of got out of bounds. that's really, I can appreciate that effort, and just the fact that he seemed to always be around to make the play. So that Justin Simmons is my honorable mention there, but I've got to actually give this thing to Shelby Harris. The two deflections, according to Pro Football Focus, he actually leads the league in the last 2 years combined with pass deflections. He has 11 pass deflections,
which is funny.
Defensive lineman.
Which is funny, by the way, because it feels like that number is deflated or very, very small. Because it feels like he has like 15 deflections, every season since he's been with the Broncos.
It feels like he gets about 1 or 2 a week, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Props there. So, Shelby Harris, you are my player of the game on the defense. Excuse me. Sorry, I couldn't hit the mute button in time. And then an honorable mention for me will go to Bradley Chubb, because the guy is officially back. Bradley Chubb is a monster, and he was really excited. And every time we got a turnover, you can hear him yelling, and he was rallying that defense. That's his defense right now. It really is. He's setting the edge. He's eating up a lot of linemen. He's getting pressure. If we can get Vaughn back, and we're still in contention, maybe in December, if Vaughn can come back at some point, potentially, look out. Look out. If the Broncos are, within a game or two of the wild card and we get Von Miller back, that defense is going to be very, very tough to score on.
It was such an impressive sack when he got to Cam Newton and he bull rushed the snot out of Isaiah Wynn. I mean, that was a type of play that if you go back and regardless if you have the All-22 film or the eye test, the fact that he used a Marvel superhero film or a Marvel superhero move killed basically Isaiah Wynn on his bull rush and knocked Isaiah Wynn into Cam Newton, and all in one process knocked Wynn on his butt and Newton on his butt in just one play. I mean, the guy, his bull rush move, I tweeted it and I said it about a few seconds ago, but his bull rush move is literally a Marvel or DC superhero move. Like, it is ridiculous the type of just pure, unadulterated strength that kid has on the edge. As far as the Drew Lock stuff is a passing comment. I know that's going all over Twitter. It is not we're talking about layers, because it's probably worth talking about, Maddie. The interceptions that he threw in that game, I don't think anybody is debating how terrible the actual plays were. But the fact that there's so many layers to it, you have Drew Lock, he's coming into this game, and he hasn't played in X amount of weeks. I mean, he wasn't practicing for X amount of weeks. The timing was just a little bit off. We saw that as clear evidence on the Tim Patrick interception with the miscommunication. Tim Patrick was supposed to run a back shoulder, a back shoulder play, and Locke thought it was going to be a back shoulder, and then he ended up throwing it to J.C. Jackson. Then you go into the play that set up everything that unfolded in the last drive of the fourth quarter. That was unfortunately a Pat Shurmur designation for me. I think that if you just, again, it just all depends on layers, but with the first down and 10, I completely understand that with the call and everything and the situation, maybe taking your shot there. And it actually hit Tim Patrick in the hands based on what I saw on the replay. So, I mean, clearly, they probably could have used, if they're going to do a play like that, they probably could have used Cortland Sutton on that play maybe, if they wanted to make that type of play. But, I mean, at the same time, it's first down and 10, run the dang ball. I mean, like, literally, just to coin the Tucci's from Blindside, just run the dang ball. Just run the dang ball. He had like 20. He had 20 plus carries for Phillip Lindsay, 100 plus yards, just run the dang ball. So I don't think anyone's discounting the fact that both those interceptions, like themselves, were terrible. It's just the layers if we peel it back and everything.
Yeah, and it, of course, two interceptions with no touchdowns to go for it. It looks like Locke had a bad day, but really, one miscommunication, one play call that really, put him in a bad spot, and then, wow, DeAndre Hopkins is really good at football. You'll see number 37 for the Cowboys looks stupid. I'm watching the game right now. So that worked out for the Patriots defense. A couple of plays that just didn't go our way, and then a couple more that also weren't paid off. With our guys not catching the ball when Locke put it exactly where it needed to be, and only his guy could catch it. He didn't throw a lot of balls that could have been picked. The only two balls that were picked, or that could have been picked, were the ones that were actually picked. So, good on Drew Lock there, for sure. Don't just be a box score watcher and then throw shade on Twitter. I repeat, do not just look at the box score and then throw shade on Twitter, because if you do, then people will know for a fact that you did not watch the game.
Exactly. Now, it's not to discount the fact that you can actually look at a box score and see potentially how a game unfolded. That's not to say that you can do that. But again, as we're talking the term layers, it seems to be a very popular term here on the podcast.
It's levels to this. There are levels
to this. There are levels that Drew Lock throwing 10 of 24 for 180 plus yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I mean, I think Ryan Koenigsberg put it best, that if the drops were calculated correctly, he would have been 14 of 21 with 3 touchdowns and no interceptions, with probably close to 250 yards roughly. How great would you think the Twitter world would be feeling after a game like that, knowing the fact that Drew Lock would have put up 3 touchdowns, 250 plus yards, and 14 of 21 on the passing front? I would feel more comfortable, at least on the Twitterverse, being how comfortable everybody else would be. But knowing the fact that people, like, as you pointed out, Matty, our box score watchers, we are where we are right now.
Well, that makes it a 30-12 win for the Broncos,
exactly,
also, which looks a lot better. So, I mean, and then there we go. Of course, we wouldn't have been able to see McMoney do all the things that he did, but very, very different narrative there for Drew Lock. And what a difference, I would say 2 weeks, 2 games, 3 weeks makes for Broncos country. We were 0-3 going into Thursday Night Football, playing against the New York Jets, and in a game that we very well could have lost, because we got up and then we gave away the lead, and then we're able to get the lead back at the end and hold on, with a little icing on the cake for Melvin Gordon with the long touchdown run. And then this game, we got up, we dominated, and then we were able to hold on to the lead with a little bit of drama towards the end that shouldn't have been. But if we could just play the AFC East every single game, I think we'll be in good shape, right?
I think we would too. Question certainly would be, the Buffalo Bills game, but I think that clearly the Broncos really came out to play, and they were really motivated in this game, and we touched on that in the beginning part of the podcast. And speaking of motivation, it sounds like, Matty, there's a good chance, at least, and this is all coming off of us recording on Monday, but this is all stemming from at least the good news that Vic Fangio had mentioned in his presser on Monday, that there is a good chance, or there is a chance, that the Broncos may be at full strength against the Kansas City Chiefs, to where there's a chance that Noah Fant, KJ Hamler, and AJ Bouye will be back for the Kansas City Chiefs game.
And Atachu.
No.
Right?
Fangio came out and said that he's doubtful this week.
Okay.
But the wild cards is Draymond Jones and DeMarcus Walker.
Yes. I want more guys that can get at number 15 wearing those gross red and gold uniforms. Ugh. Let's get those uniforms dirty. Let's get that number 15 dirty. Let's put his butt on the ground. I want his voice to be even higher pitched than normal. We need to have as many horses, pun intended, in our stable as possible to rotate in and get after that guy. It's not looking like Sammy Watkins is probably going to play. So I think that's going to be one less weapon. So you only have to deal with like 4 track stars on the outside instead of, or in 3 instead of 4 there. And then, of course, a Kelsey up the middle. But that should at least help. Getting Boye back will help. Callahan playing with some swagger. Ojemudia. So, I mean, we've got guys that we can play too. And, oh, by the way, we didn't mention him, but Kareem Jackson was a freaking missile all over the field too. It looks like he's really, really starting to lock in, and we'll need him to with Travis Kelce and company coming in. That'll be interesting to see how we deal with the tight end in that game. But I'm really excited to hear about a couple of guys on our defensive line coming back. Noah Fant could be huge for us, and you know what? Albert O missed a couple of passes, sure, but I liked a lot of what I saw.
Flashes.
And that size is incredible. And Drew Lock trusts him.
And if we're being completely, let's just come out and say it. If we're being biased, if you go back and you look at the touchdowns or impending or possible touchdowns, one of them in particular, one to Jerry Jeudy, but the other one, of course, to Albert O. I mean, you could make an argument that was pass interference on one
sure.
on the one where he was thrown to. In fact, I wonder if Locke threw the pass to Albert O to draw the pass interference penalty. He could care less about the fact that it was going to be a touchdown. But there are quarterbacks that sometimes throw the pass to potentially initiate a penalty. So it made me wonder if Locke threw to Alberto's way to initiate a potential penalty. So clearly it wasn't called, but Alberto, to further what you were talking about though, Maddie, I think that Alberto, and this was just me last night just dreaming of the possibility of Alberto and Noah Fant on the same field together, the size mismatch at that particular point will be just breathtaking because you get to the red zone. Yes, we want to make sure we can establish the running game, of course, in the red zone, but knowing the fact that once Noah Fant is healthy, okay, now you have Noah Fant, who is clearly proven to be a budding superstar at the tight end position, and now you have Albert O. So now you have both tight ends now with size of 6'5" and 6'6", maybe even 6'7", of just pure height advantage and our true red zone mismatches. What exactly do you do? I mean, it's almost bringing back the Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski type of mismatches on the field to where you have just dynamic tight ends to try and cover, and it's going to really make, I think, defenses uncomfortable if you get Locke, who's very comfortable with throwing to Alberto, and then now clearly shown comfortability throwing to Fant. It's just going to make this that much more chemistry there with Locke. And another thing too, as we're wrapping up the podcast and stuff too, the defense alone is playing at a much higher clip, and the team itself is playing at a much higher clip right now going into the Kansas City Chiefs game. That was not the case last year. Is that the defense is playing with confidence. Drew Lock is just coming back. So we'll certainly see what this practice will do for him. Another week with that offense, getting back with that offense. But the team itself is playing at a higher level at this particular point than they ever did with Luck last year at quarterback.
Yeah, I won't say ever. That Houston Texans game was a clinic for sure, but
I meant overall though, as far as like momentum going into the Chiefs game.
Yeah, for sure. That momentum is really good. The defense is playing really well despite the injuries and then getting the guys back. No Von Miller, but we got Bradley Chubb, and Bradley Chubb is trending up, and so I really am going to be excited to see what we do. Now, we're recording this on Monday, and the Chiefs just ran for like 200 yards or something crazy on the Bills, and that's probably going to be a point of emphasis for them going into the game against the Broncos. But man, we got a really good defense. Fangio's calling really good plays, and it'll be really, this game right here is going to be the barometer. If we can get back to 500 by beating the Chiefs, getting off the schneid after we've lost our last 9 games to Kansas City. So if we can break that streak and get back to 500, this team could take off.
It might, and because I myself, based on the events, the current events certainly that unfolded with just the Patriots and Bronco game alone, of them not playing for 2 weeks, and then a potential bye week now abruptly being thrown in there, I kind of called this Patriots game being a do or die or potential season changer for the Broncos with everything. So I would not be surprised if it gets moved, the same mentality gets moved to the Kansas City Chiefs game, and it really should, because they're the Super Bowl champions, reigning Super Bowl champions. They're your division foe. You want to come out and just obliterate them if you can on the defensive side. And if we're being completely honest, they should have been the Kansas City Chiefs a few years back in 2018. They really should have been the Chiefs in 2018. And now that their quarterback is potentially here, I would imagine, whether it's a snow game or not, we'll talk about it more as the week progresses, but you can bet, going back to Kansas City, there's some rumors that may be another snowy game, but you can bet that will weigh mentally on Locke's mind as his preparation is starting to unfold, that he wants to right potentially what had happened in Kansas City last year with that snowy game. But overall, Maddie, we'll certainly touch a little bit on the state of the AFC West as the episodes progress this week. But this is a good barometer, a really good barometer for the Broncos as far as where they're at with the AFC West. If they can come out and really show and be competitive with the Kansas City Chiefs, because the Raiders beat the Chiefs. The Raiders beat the Chiefs. I mean, the Raiders beat the Chiefs. The Los Angeles Chargers with Justin Herbert are clearly proven to be very capable, at least offensively, to go toe-to-toe with you, or really any opponent. Defensively is where they're lacking currently with all those injuries. So as of right now, just on the young offensive playmaker side of things, the AFC West appears to be trending in the right direction.
Yeah, so the Chiefs got 5 wins, the Raiders are 5-2, we're 2-3, and the Chargers are 1-4. But the Chargers and the Broncos have a handful of games that they could have won that could have gone the other way. The games that the Broncos didn't win, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 5-0, the Tennessee Titans are 5-0, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 4-2. So that's a 14-2 combined record for the 3 teams that the Broncos have lost to, and 2 of those teams we could have actually beaten. We could have beaten the 2 undefeated teams, the last 2 undefeated teams in the AFC. The Seahawks are still undefeated for the NFC, so you can't say that completely for the NFL. But very impressive what we've done, really shorthanded, and when we're trending in the right direction, potentially getting some guys back. So who knows what this game's going to look like against Kansas City, but this is almost a season-making game, too. You could potentially say that this this is a put up or shut up game for the Broncos. If we're going to make something of ourselves this season, this game, especially with it being at home, is one that we absolutely have got to get.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of the Mainly Broncos podcast. Maddie, thank you so much as always for being my esteemed colleague alongside with us on this podcast adventure. Thank you guys for listening to the Mainly Broncos podcast over on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, or anywhere really that you guys can listen to the Mainly Broncos podcast. Thank you again to everybody that listened to the podcast with Alex. Maybe we should have him on regularly now that the Broncos won a game. So it seems like Shelby and Alex are maybe the good luck charms here going forward. Maybe Maddie, I don't know, but we'll definitely have some more guests, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we need to have them both on Wednesday. Maybe we just need to make that happen Wednesday or Thursday. Just get them back in here. Just, all the rabbit's foot, all the good luck charms we can have. I'm not not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious.
I'm a little stitious. That's right, Michael Scott. All right, so again, I am Cameron Parker. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Cameron Parker PO. You can follow Maddie at Maddie Molespod. So thank you guys very much for listening to another edition of the Mainly Broncos podcast.